awesome.
Awesome.
That was awesome.
You guys are awesome.
No,
You're awesome.
no.
You are awesome.
Sir, you are awesome. Seriously.
Awesome. Awesome. Awesome.
Everything is awesome.
Welcome to this week's edition of Everything is Awesome. I'm your host, Kev, and this is the show where we sit down and talk to awesome people about awesome things. And we are in the middle of some sweltering heat. Good God, it's not even July yet. Happy Monday. This podcast episode was supposed to air last week, but I got into life. Life got in the way between work and family life and all that good stuff, and I fell behind on editing. My apologies to the one, the only Brian Durkin from Full Belly Laughs for not getting it up last Wednesday, but that's why we're posting it today on Monday. First thing for the week, not first thing in the morning, but first thing in the week. You know, by the time you can download this, you can drive home from work or drive into work if you're a second shift guy or gal, and you can listen to the conversation, part 2, I had with Brian Durkin from Full Belly Laughs. And we go on to talk about, we continue our conversation about Magic the Gathering and some other nerdy things, or how we're terrible nerds and stuff. And we go like another half hour or so in our conversation before we actually sit down and discuss Brian and his comedy and his podcasts and his brand. So, and just real quick before I let you go on to that conversation, because I screwed up last week, you got 0 episodes of Everything is Awesome. You're going to get at least 2 this week, if not 3 episodes of Everything is Awesome. That's right. You're going to get the normal episode 19, what you're listening to right now, on Monday. Then Wednesday, the normally scheduled podcast is going to be up. Here's a hint. That's our infamous, I've talked about it for weeks now, episode that I sat down and recorded with the one, the only, someone that I truly admire and look up to in this podcasting game, Aaron McGathy. So excited that I get to share that podcast with you guys. I'm really excited about like the pre-intro that's going to air, because it's just, it's so, it's neat. It's a nice insight into like my thought process, I think, and how I get nervous and stuff. And then Friday, I may try to post like an afterthought of interviewing Aaron McGathy, because that's an important interview for me. Every interview I do and every conversation I have is important in some way. For whatever reasons, I just like to talk, as you guys know, and having the opportunity to talk to all these different people is really cool. It's the whole reason I do this podcast. It's to sit down and talk to interesting people. And even if you're not interested, like, I love talking to people. So if I can get an interesting conversation out of that, and as you know, I like to talk, so I will pull interesting conversation out of people usually. So, but this one with Aaron McGathy, and it's weird to say her full name every time I refer to her, but this conversation I had with her it's really special to me, because it's not only the first podcast interview I'm doing with someone that was on my Git list, someone that involved like going through a booking manager to get on the show, someone that's like has like a I don't want to say huge, I guess a huge fan, but it was just someone that of fame, I guess is the word I'm looking for. But more importantly of all that, she truly is just one of those people I admire in this field. So I believe she did a podcast years ago on This Feels Terrible with Mark Maron, who I think, if I remember correctly, she said is one of her inspirations for her podcast. And like, truly, this podcast, Everything is Awesome, stems from a very similar world, and I don't know that she necessarily inspired it, because before I listened to This Feels Terrible, I listened to Human Conversation and Harmontown, and it was just kind of a different kind of podcasting that I used to do. So I think I started this podcast before I started listening to This Feels Terrible. But truly, because I've known Aaron from other podcasts, and I quickly grew to admiring her as an interviewer and podcaster and stuff. And there's, I can count 3 people who are those people, and one of them is Aaron McGathy. So the fact that I got to sit down and talk to someone that I idolize or I admire or whatever you want to say is just so freaking fantastic. So I will have a lot to say, I think, post-interview. Like, after listening to it so many times, I think I have some more things to say about it, and I may do a quick 15-minute bonus episode on Friday. So that means Monday, Wednesday, Friday, you get some Everything is Awesome. It's going to be an awesome week. We're burying the lead. We're crushing. Let's not worry about any of that. Today is all about Brian Durkin from Full Belly Laughs. Let's get into it right now here on Everything is Awesome, only on awesomepodcast.com.
I stopped playing Magic like in middle school because the crappy comic book store that I was playing at like just stopped kind of supporting space for people to play. So then I just stopped playing it for a while, and then I bumped into some people like at the mall or whatever that played it, and it was like another comic book store was kind of crappy, but good sharpshooter players would show up to like get great trades off people, but like. For some reason, I got talking to those people, and they're like, "Oh yeah, you should come to this other place. Alternate Universe is a great card stores dedicated to cards." And I went there, and that just like changed my life. It was this haven for people that took cards like really, really seriously, and there were like a lot of really, really good, like great players that played there. Like people that had made the Magic Pro Tour, and then for other card games that I played, like the Versus System card game, like I played that for a little while, and then. The contingent of people that I played with, like we were qualifying for like every one of their pro circuit events. And, a friend of mine had won the equivalent of like, two, they were called like 10Ks. They would be like the equivalent of like a Magic Grand Prix for like a sports reference for the layman's that have no idea what I'm talking about. It would be like the equivalent of like if there was like, not something as big as like the U.S. Open or British Open, but like an open golf tournament where like all the pros play in. He basically won like two of those. So yeah, like a lesser U.S. Open thing, like won two of them, and then yeah, it's fun. Like when you are playing with great people, and it's like, I'm hanging out with that guy the week before he leaves for that trip, and we're both studying results, and we come to the card shop. And it's like, I have a great idea. And he's like, I have a great idea too. And it's like, all right, you go first. And it's like, hey, I think this strategy would be good. And then the other person immediately says, that's what I was thinking. And then he wins some giant tournament the next weekend. It's fun. It's exciting, and it makes it removes the Hollywood factor. Like I remember the first time I played on like a Versus Pro Tour, I was like, very nervous, because I was in the same, like I'd been following it for a while, and that was like my first big invitational event, and I'd read these articles from people and read the coverage, and I'd be like, oh my god, there's so and so, and there's what's his face, and then you get there, and then you just realize like they're just some other fucking nerd, just like you. Like it doesn't. Like they're fucking nobody, like it doesn't matter. Like it does not matter. Like outside of that room, no one even fucking knows who you are. Like it doesn't mean anything. And like anyone that you adore, unless there's someone like Britney Spears or something, somebody that's like mega famous or something, right? But even like most comedians, unless they're like a Louis C.K. or like a Kevin Hart or something, like they can still like walk down the street, and like most people will not know that they've like been on TV, and it's the same. And like that finally sit in. I'm like, oh, like this person was in the same position as me before, and that just changed my outlook on everything, and it just helped me. And then eventually, like I had success in like the World of Warcraft card game. Like I basically had like the same accolades that my friend had in Versus Systems. So then I was that guy, like, and it was just so weird, like I would sit down to play against someone in a tournament, and they'd be like, oh god, I'm so unlucky to get paired against Brian Durkin round one, and in my head I'm just giggling, like I just can't, I'm like, oh my god, like I know, like I just wanted to like, like openly empathize with them, be like, oh, I totally know what it's like to be you, and I at times I still feel like you, but of course in the moment it's like I gotta attack that weakness. It's just, I just lean on them so I can win. But yeah, it's It's funny. It's funny.
Okay, so I don't know where to go. That's again, I'm just I've never spoken to someone who's taken it so seriously, and like I didn't even know there was a WoW card game. I know
Yeah.
I used to play WoW.
Yeah, it was the predecessor to like Hearthstone.
Oh, okay,
Yeah, like
which I have never played.
yeah,
Maybe I
same.
have. I don't think I
I
have.
have not played it either. Like I am way too fucking busy with like jobs that actually pay me money, and then also like creative stuff.
Yeah. Yes.
So yeah, I just that's in part why like I casually competitively play Magic from time to time because it's like I'm invested in vintage Magic for people that don't know that. So Magic's like over 20 years old. Their events restrict people on what cards they can play with because of course if you're like, hey, Kevin and Brian talking about Magic, maybe I want to play Magic. It would be kind of shitty if you had to buy some super expensive card from like 20 years ago.
Yeah.
So like most of the events are like you can only play with cards from the last 2 years, and then they tier from there. So yeah, so since I have always had my fingers to the pulse of the format where you can play with the history of the game, um, that's where I have the most fun playing. The cards are super expensive, but um, there's not a ton of events. Things don't change that often, so I can kind of like, if I went to a tournament this weekend, yes, I would be rusty, but I wouldn't be like a total noob. Like, like
Mhm.
pretty much the strategies everyone's playing with are like the same because it doesn't change that often.
Well, that's exactly when I was building a deck. I'm like, all right, I'm gonna go. I was always a red green guy. I'm
Yeah,
gonna go and build my my typical red green deck that I
that
always
was
play.
my original deck, man. I love red green.
Yeah. And I'll tell you what, I built a red green deck and it was, I think I overloaded it with lands or something because it was dog shit. I was like, oh my God, I don't remember playing this badly 10, 20 years ago or whatever it was. And I finally found like a happy medium. I've actually gone all red. Like that's my go-to deck is just a plain old red, quick attack deck.
Sure.
But yeah, the new and the new cards are interesting. Like they have like the most recent set like incorporates like basically werewolves and like
Yep.
the transformation and flipping the
Shadows
card.
over
It's
Innistrad. We're
cool.
back in Innistrad.
So that was a thing before.
Yeah. So like, so since Magic's over 20 years old, they're a little like dry on creativity.
Yeah.
So like the last like,
Yeah.
there's been many reoccurrences where they're like, oh yeah, remember that like group of sets we did before? Like we're gonna go back to that universe, and like yeah, they're like revisiting an old universe. But I mean, it's good and bad. It gets people really excited because it's like, let's say you played like 6 years ago, and you're like, oh man, I really liked Innistrad. Maybe I'll play again.
Mm.
And then it from the serious players, or at least the serious like investors, it creates this whole like buzz because it's like, ooh, are they gonna like bring back this card that was like worth a ton of money because it's old,
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I mean, and then there's the third group that are either new players or me who's coming back, and like I've never seen that, so like it's new to me.
yeah,
Like this whole
no, it's fun to like, I guess because I'm not super up and up on Shaz Innistrad, but I am 110% certain that they have flip cards, which I'm sure you haven't seen before until now.
yeah, no, it was the first time that I saw it, and it was I don't know, it's just a cool little thing. I was like, oh, this is neat. Like they
Yeah.
did the colorless mana where you like wasteland, you have to use this wasteland as a land and it's actual colorless mana
Yep.
that you can spend. Not and like I was talking to a friend who we used to play back in the day and he's like, oh, you mean the little circle with a number? I'm like,
Nope.
no, that's colorless, yeah, but this is a different, like this is, you can't use any land for this colorless. You have to use the colorless land. And he's
Yeah.
like, what? I'm like, dude, I don't, this the rules. It's the thing. It's the system. It's new. Well, at least new to me
Oh no,
as I find out.
that's like a one time only thing with like the return to That was like I think only in Oath of the Gatewatch, like whatever the sequel was,
Yeah.
like the Zendikar revisited.
Yeah. Yep.
Um, yeah, and it. I don't know. I mean, from a flavor perspective, like from the lore of magics, of course, there's like novels and shit. Just like anything.
I used to be big into them. I used to read like that was I exclusively read magic novels when I was a kid.
Yeah, see, like that, that's where I'm like a terrible nerd. So it's like I have played all these things, and I can tell I could tell you like all the stuff about magic, but it's like I hate the lore. Like I don't give. I'm like I don't give a shit when the Eldrazi's beat so and so. What, like I just need a 3-drop that can do this for my deck. Like I'm just so like cutthroat about it. Like I just
That's
like
funny.
distance myself from the flavor.
Well, it's funny because like now I don't remember any of those novels. Like I read a lot of them. I don't
Sure.
remember any of that story. But like reading, like whenever I guess it was Oath of the Gatewatch. Like I was just reading up about it and like reading like the little bit of the story. I'm like, oh, that's cute. They do like a story behind the cards.
Yeah.
And I don't know why like that was like. Again, we're here talking about it, and I'm thinking back in the day. Like I don't know why that's a surprise to me. There's always been a story, and that's a big thing. Like I'm really into the idea of no matter what the medium is, podcasting, TV, film, novels, whatever it is that you're doing. At the end of the day, it's all storytelling, and I can forgive a lot of bad things. Like, for instance, I like to use The Walking Dead as an example.
Okay.
It's not always the strongest writing, like in both the comic and the TV show. But to me, at the end of the day, typically from episode to episode, or from from season to season, like the story is typically spot on. Like I really enjoy it. And I can forgive the bad writing that happens here and there, and the bad acting that happens here and there, because the story is just that good.
Yeah.
And say so with magic, that's now. I don't think I was that way 10, 15 years ago. I wasn't really into story. I was just into, I guess, like popcorn. But now I appreciate story. So like I saw that in Magic, I'm like, oh, that. I mean, and don't get me wrong, I can't tell you any of the story. I play to play basically.
Yeah.
Not play like you, but I play to play.
Yeah. No, I totally understand. But yeah, there's people that like play because they love the novels, and
yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, and like, but that's where I'm a terrible nerd. Like, I hate Lord of the Rings. I hate Game of Thrones. Like, I'm like I'm the worst nerd ever. But I could fucking, if you were a casual Magic player, I could guarantee I could make your deck like infinitely better. Where you crush all your friends on your dining table. I'm like
guarantee. I bet that's true.
Yeah.
I'm the same way when it comes to Lord of the Rings. Like that. Like I've watched the movies twice.
Oh, God,
once in the theater.
I couldn't get through the first time.
Oh yeah. So and I'll say this: I appreciate them. They are movies that I would not call bad, but I watched them once, and then I watched the extended version on DVD, and I will never watch them again because as much as I'm into D&D, okay, like I kind of jumped into that world recently. And my buddy, he writes books in this world he created called Tellist, which is, all kind of stems from like Baldur's Gate and that sword and fantasy type of world. I don't like it. Like I don't like Lord of the Rings. Like I appreciate it.
Sure.
I will never watch it. I didn't watch The Hobbit. I'll never watch The Hobbit. I mean, the closest I was really into it was probably Hercules in Greek mythology. But Game of Thrones, haven't watched an episode.
Yeah. No, it's funny that you mentioned The Hobbit. 'Cause it's like my mom, that was like one of her favorite books ever. But she like couldn't stand Lord of the Rings, and I think it's because like Lord of the Rings is like a true fantasy / like sci-fi book, because it's not, those genres they lean so heavy on the setting, and like the story like comes second. It's all about like the world that they're in, and like The Hobbit is like more of like a straightforward story. The novel I'm talking about, not fucking 10-hour 3-movie epic that's been made or will be made. I don't even know if they're all out yet, but
I think they are, but I don't know.
Yeah, I have no clue. But yeah, that's what drives me crazy about like Yeah, I just fantasy is like a hard sell for me because for a long time I thought that I wanted to be a screenwriter. Maybe at some point I will sell scripts or something or whatever. But when I was independently studying how to like be a good screenwriter, it was all the resources I was reading. I read Robert McKee's story and Sid Field's screenplay and like all these other books and stuff. They really hammered home like how you have to be like, especially if you're trying to sell your script and go through like the studio system, you got to be like really economical. Like if your script lands on some assistant's desk that's reading it for some guy that could get you somewhere, your your script is the difference is like keeping that person from going to lunch or going home for the day. So it's like it better be tight, like it better be like on point. So it got me to be really sensitive to stories that drag. And so basically anytime that I watch a movie that's like over 2 hours, if I am like, it really better justify why it's over 2 hours. And like, like the Lord of the Rings just to me move so slow and are just so like long, like actual minute wise that it just like that to me is like a huge thing that like irks me. Also, like fantasy is just like a hard sell. Like it's probably like my least favorite genre. Like if I had to pick between sci-fi and fantasy, I would like slam dunk sci-fi in like a heartbeat.
I agree.
Yeah, it's because it's like both of them put setting first over like, and not that doesn't mean that like you can't have a fantasy or a sci-fi story that has a great story, but the reason that you're in one of those genres is because you've created some like not normal world, and like that's kind of going to be like at the forefront. That's like why we're in the future, or we're in some alternate timeline, or we're in some fantasy universe, like that's how we arrived there. So in general, that's going to get like way more attention than, some normal drama like set in like in today's world. But generally when you're writing a sci-fi story, you're creating like this dystopian future or alternate timeline that is saying something that's like socially conscious about the world you're living in today. And like that I love like socially conscious like content. Like The Wire is my favorite television show ever. So it's like, certain sci-fi pieces that have like really interesting commentary, like, oh, what if, this happened? Like, how would the world react? And what would the world be like? Or, this thing that I see going on today, like, let's push it to an extreme. And what does that look like? That's really, if it's a great question, that does fascinate me. But like, I don't fucking care that you invented a language for elves. Like I just don't care. Like I do not care. I couldn't care less. Like that scores no points for me. So that's why like stuff like Lord of the Rings is such a hard sell. Like and a friend originally said this to me, and I totally live by it. When it comes to TV. And please interrupt me if you want to get in. I feel like I'm talking for too long.
No, you're fine, man.
I have, and I think he's totally right. I have a 2-hour rule when it comes to TV. If after 2 hours of content, I am not hooked on the show, fuck that show. That's just my, I feel like if you can't get your shit together and really get into like the catalyst of the season and like hook me on the characters and stuff in the amount of minutes that would be a feature film, then like you're just, in my opinion, you're just not doing your job right.
I'm a my rule is 3 episodes. So, anywhere from an hour and a half to 3 hours.
Okay.
I have the same kind of premise where you need to, I'll give you 3 episodes. But the problem is like, for instance, Game of Thrones. I don't know if it's the content or if it was I always happen to sit down when I'm kind of like, I'm done recording this interview, it's 12:30 at night, I'm going to sit down and watch a show, and I fall asleep during it 2 or 3 times now.
Oh yeah, no, I've the first time I tried to watch Game of Thrones was the day that it aired. I fell asleep, and that's like at 9 o'clock on a Sunday, and I was a lot younger then. that was a huge red flag. The show was not entertaining enough, you know? Like, and people are like, oh, you have to watch it to the end. And it's like, yeah, okay. We watch a brother and sister bang each other and push some kid out the window. Sorry, spoiler for the least. The first fucking episode from like 5 years ago. But anyway, it's like, okay, yeah, I guess that's exciting. Could we get to that like 50 minutes earlier? Because nothing happened before that, you know?
Well, and like a show that so Game of Thrones is probably the show for me that has I mean, I also haven't given it that 3 episodes, but I can't get through the first episode to give it that chance.
Same.
Gotham, I'm a big superhero guy.
Okay.
So I usually like almost all this, anything superhero related, I tend to watch.
Sure.
And Gotham was one of those shows that like after the first episode, I'm like, I don't know if you're going to pass my 3 episode rule. And by the time we got to the 3rd episode, like it did win me over. Like it had its, a lot of weak points, but Gotham is, I think, one of the shows that like for the better won me over. Like it's gotten progressively better.
Interesting.
And so that's like, I don't know if I've ever really seen a show that like, I totally just after, there's gotta be something out there, but I guess it's just I can't remember it. It's just a forgettable show because it didn't make my 3 episode.
I have several shows that did not pass. I mean, Game of Thrones is like a famous one. I actually like my go-to example is like I cannot stand House of Cards.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it drives me crazy. I actually gave that show 3 episodes. I gave it an extra episode past my rule. And it failed with flying colors.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
So that's interesting. I actually think I've only watched the first 2 seasons. For me, the first season was great. I think the second season was much weaker, and that's probably why I haven't watched the 3rd and maybe 4th season.
Yeah. No, for me. So for the listeners out there, my name's Brian Durkin, and I'm a savage hater. For me, Game of Thrones, like I'm not Game of Thrones, House of Cards. I just the style choice of the main character, I can't remember his name, the one that Kevin Spacey plays.
Frank Underwood.
Underwood, that's right. The style choice to have him talk to the camera drives me up a fucking wall, and I just can't get it.
Wow.
I know that.
So that's what drew me to it.
I know that's everyone's favorite part of the show, and I get why they do it. The choice just irks me, and the first episode really bothered me. I watched the second episode with my girlfriend at the time, and I was like, all right, this episode was pretty good. You know, I'll give it a 3rd. In the 3rd episode, he did another talk to camera that I thought was just like, that just drove me up a wall, and I was like, I'm done. I just can't watch anymore.
That's interesting.
So I understand that I'm like in the minority. Like if it, that is like my prime, because everything else about that show, because people are like, that know me better are like, wow, like I can't believe you don't like that show, Brian. Because I do love, I enjoy shows that are kind of about that like political game of like, like, for lack of a better phrasing, that Game of Thrones, where people are like bidding for power and like screwing each other over and just like rising through the ranks, that like there's a huge element of that in The Wire, and I've seen every episode of Oz, and I love Oz, and there's a bunch of that goes on in that, but like I just if he didn't talk to the camera, I would be like probably a diehard fan, but that's just my pet peeve. I understand it's my issue that I have to work on and maybe talk to a therapist about, but
it's like a political Deadpool. Like that's what drew me to it. Like I was just really into I don't know what it is. I don't know if it was the Deadpool comics, or I mean, it probably honestly is Saved by the Bell. Like the breaking of the fourth wall has just always intrigued me.
See, and it's funny that you say that, because there's a lot of things that I love that break the fourth wall. Like I'm super into Lady Dynamite right now, Maria Bamford's new show. I've only seen the first couple episodes, but like that show is like super breaks the fourth wall and is like really quirky and weird and wild. And I love things that are like, like very like anti-plot like that. And I love Ferris Bueller's Day Off, and he talks to the camera and stuff.
That just was back on the big screen.
Really?
Yeah, at least around here in the suburbs. And I got to go see it. Obviously that was a film that I think I was literally months old when it came out.
Mm-hmm.
So I never got to see it on the big screen. So to see it on the big screen, especially after kind of being like, not that I ever forgot about it, but like, it's a movie that I have and I haven't watched in years, but like Deadpool reminded me of it in spoilers, his after credit scene.
Yes.
Yeah. and I was like, oh man, I want to sit down and watch that movie. And again, after Deadpool, I still didn't go sit down and watch it. And then I saw it on the big screen and it was just a pure joy. Like movie's 30 years old.
It's classic.
So it's such, I forgot how much I liked that movie.
It's so good.
Yeah,
it's amazing. But yeah, so it's like, I don't want people to think that like I hate all fourth wall stuff. But for me, and I guess I'll go on the record on saying, for me, House of Cards, Frank Underwood talking to the camera to me is like a cop out. Like to me, like that, I just feel like there had to have been, like, to me, it's more interesting if they don't use that cheap trick to like go into his thoughts. Like I would rather just like watch them develop like from afar, like as a normal audience member, like for film, I guess. So that's
well, and you know what? For a drama like that, I totally see that point of view. Like breaking the fourth wall, always kind of makes more sense, like in a comedy. I guess.
That's a good point, because the stuff that we're citing is not as serious as House of Cards.
Yeah. So I could, like, there's a world where House of Cards was developed and produced where it doesn't break the fourth wall, and it's probably, for me, probably just as good. For you, obviously, a lot better.
Yeah.
And you're a drama. It's a drama, so I can see why it doesn't work for everyone.
Yeah, no, and it's funny because like it's just, I just can't get over that hump, because the drama of it, I love hard dramas like movies and TV. Like it's funny, like a lot nowadays I've been watching more like silly or comedy shows because I just want something light and fun to watch, and then also because I'm now watching comedy with like a more critical eye because it's something that I'm doing now. But yeah, like before that, sign me up for like the most gut-wrenching, brutal drama ever. Like I was all about that. It was sad.
That's something I've gotten more into now as I get older, and I think like Chasing Amy, as long as I can remember, going back to that, has always been my go-to. Like, you know what? I kind of need to cry. Like, there's something, like, whatever is wrong with me, like a good cry will make me feel better. And I know Chasing Amy is a movie that does bring me to tears. Like it is that, I don't know, I guess it's just that good.
Yeah.
And I relate to some of the stuff that happens in that movie. And, so as now that I'm older, like I also think being a dad does this too, but like I literally, like I will cry. Like I went to go see the Muppet movie with Jason Segel.
Okay.
Segel? No, that's not how you Segel.
Jason Segel. Yeah.
Yes, dude from How I Met Your Mother.
Yep.
And I think my fiance was pregnant with our first kid at the time. And literally at the end of that movie, Kermit has this rousing speech that I literally tear up for. And of course, judge away, everyone does. I get it. I cried at a Muppet movie. But like things like that, like I again, going back to me being the thinner, less famous Kevin Smith, I cry at the drop of anything. And I guess if you're not huge into Kevin Smith anymore, he's a big crier now. Like he
Okay.
records himself. He watched the season finale, the first season finale of The Flash, and he cried during it. And I totally understand why. Like, it was an emotional episode, but like, I'm literally that guy now where I'll cry at everything. And so like, I really appreciate dramas now that are, serious and more in tone of being not really a crying, but I guess more like a thinker drama.
Sure. Yeah.
And of course, and the more emotional ones, like that's like, I'm more into things like that than comedies now. Like I'll watch a comedy every day if I had to, but they're more of my popcorn movies now. Like them and some of the blockbuster movies, like Marvel movies and stuff.
Yeah.
They're usually more popcorn movies for me now, whereas the dramas are more of the thinking, emotional movies.
For sure. Yeah, absolutely. I love, like, that's what I gravitate towards. Like, I tend to watch like a lot of independent films because I just want to me, like, the best movie that you can watch is after you watch it. The worst mistake you made was watching it by yourself, because now you need someone to talk to about it. It was just like something about the story was just like so moving or incredible or interesting, how they did something, or weird or ambiguous. We were just like, oh man, like what do you think that meant? Or, oh, I can't believe that happened, so yeah, those kind of moments to me like make the best film for sure. But yeah, I totally agree that I think objectively, Chasing Amy is without a doubt Kevin Smith's best movie. I might, just because of like my feelings on like religion and Catholicism, and it was sort of the first Kevin Smith movie that I saw. Like Dogma is really high up on my list, but
yeah,
if I had to pick one, I would say Chasing Amy, because to me it is like this like beautiful like dramedy too, because like the first half of that movie is just like a typical comedy, but then it gets real serious, and like you're not upset with that turn, and it's so interesting to me that it takes that turn, and you're like, you're still along for the ride. And I love any serious subject that can still crack jokes that just feels so real.
Totally. Oh God, I don't. We're at an hour and 40 minutes. Let's talk about you a little bit now. Sure. I feel bad.
Yeah.
There's something that you said a few times during our conversation here, and that's what this long form. I don't know if we said this, what will technically be off air or not, but like, so long form. I mentioned to you at one point that I'm bad at interviews, and that's the whole purpose of Everything is Awesome. To me, like I said in the intro, is I sit down and talk to awesome people about awesome things. And where I'm a bad interviewer, I like to think of myself as a good conversationalist. And that's what what we've been doing is like this might be the truest reason, this episode, or these two episodes, maybe the truest reason I even started this show. Because I always thought, I was like, I basically want a new co-host every week. Like, I think that's a good way. I can't get anyone to commit to co-host with me, so why not have a new co-host every week? And that's what these two episodes feel like. Is just shooting the shit, and that's I always appreciate like the Smodcast of the world, or I'm trying to think of another podcast that I listen to that it's just two best friends. That's what all my podcasts in the back in the day, where it was just like two or three friends sitting around talking, just formatted more into a radio show than I now at 32 would want. But anyway, you mentioned a few times, now that you're getting into comedy. So it sounds like comedy hasn't been something you've been doing very long.
No, yeah. So my true origin story, I've heard this lore that like I guess my path into comedy is like similar to Louis C.K. in a way. So apparently, like before Louis C.K. was a name that everyone knows, he like tried comedy and did terrible and didn't do it again for like several years or something until he like gave it his all. Whatever. I have a very similar path. So like about 5 years ago, one of my best friends was getting really, really into comedy, wanted to do stand up, but he's just one of those people that doesn't enjoy doing things alone, at least not like for the first time. He'll be
I'm that guy.
Yeah, he's just one of those guys where it's like if he's never been to like some show before, I'll be there with him, or like he'll go with his wife or something.
Gotcha.
He's always got like a partner in crime with him.
Yeah.
So yeah, and it was the first time we met in college, and it was something that we talked about, outside of class, and we really hit it off. And I'm one of those people where I'm like, everything is quote unquote tentatively on my bucket list. Like I will try pretty much anything, just to like have the experience, just to be like, oh, I experienced that. Because just from like a creative perspective, and then especially like from a writing perspective, gaining any experience is like super valuable, because then it just like helps me write better in some other character's voice or perspective. So so I was like, yeah, sure. Like, I would love to see what your stand-up comedy is like. And yeah, I would absolutely try stand-up. I'm like, I've had a ton of crazy shit happen to me in my life. Like I could just talk about. Granted, I didn't understand that stand-up is not storytelling. So of course, I didn't do so. Like the first time I went up, I did really good, but I think most of the audience knew it was my first time. So they just like kind of cheered me on. But yeah, I only went like once a week with him to this. There was this room called like Laughs on Philly. That's what it was called on the. No, it was called Laughs on Fairmount. Now it's called Laughs on Philly. It used to be this place, Urban Saloon, in Fairmount, but it's no longer there. And there's like a whole new crew of people that like run this like comedy shows under that banner. But yeah. So yeah, I only went like once a week, and I went with him like not even maybe once a week, like maybe every other week. And then I wasn't really like writing new jokes. I kind of it was just an excuse to like hang out with him, and like have something to do. So like I really didn't take it seriously. And then I obviously did terrible because I was super new and wasn't taking it seriously. So I was like, this sucks. And then I was like, I'm not doing this anymore. So then, many years went by, and I finished my master's in writing, and then, got a job related to writing that was like good for a while, but then I just got really like disenchanted with my life. And I'm just like, I just felt like I was at this dead end job, like doing something that I'm like, why am I even working at this company? I don't like being here. I don't really like what I'm doing. I don't feel like I'm growing professionally. I'm like, I haven't done anything creative in a while. And I've been living in the city. And like when I used to do comedy with my buddy, we lived in the suburbs. So it was like a little bit more of a pain in the butt to like go into the city for an open mic. But now I was just like, hey, like I could take a bus and I'll be at an open mic in like 20 minutes. Like I'm like, let me give this like an honest try. And then I also, around the same time that I was starting stand up, I knew that I wanted to do what is my podcast now. I knew I wanted to have like a comedy food brand, like a website, and then like a compendium, like podcast and stuff. And part of my motivation to start stand up was just like, well, my angle with food is that I want it to be comedic, and if I'm going to be comedic, like I should learn to be funny. So
and I gotta say, because I can't wait to sit down and finally dive into the podcast, which I'm sure we'll get to in a couple of moments here, because like it is my favorite thing. Well, not my favorite thing in the world, but one of my favorite things in the world is definitely food. Like I love to eat, and I was like, and I like comedy, and I'm like, this when we first started talking, I'm like, this seems like one of those podcasts that are going to be a hidden gem that I just found.
Cool. I'm glad that you think that way. I'm hoping everyone in the world thinks that. No, but I vividly remember I was out to brunch with one of my best friends, Brittany, and I'm talking, and I was in this mode. I'm like, I gotta do something creative again. And I just I was done with like card games. I was like really done with that life. And, cause I used to have a successful blog, called Next Level Board Games. Or no, it was just, or Next Level, it was Next Level Card Games. Jeez, I can't even remember the name of my own website. But yeah, it was something I started in college, and I wrote like a ton of strategy content for like really like nerdy board games. So, for your basic board gamer, they go to Toys R Us to get Monopoly. for your like next tier up, they go to like Toys R Us or a specialty store or maybe Amazon to get like Settlers of Catan. I was talking about games that are like more advanced than Settlers and writing like serious strategy content about them. And at the time, I was really, really into board games, so it wasn't that much of a chore. But I hadn't been playing anything in a while, and the problem was it took a ton of work to like pump out that material because I would have to get the game, play it a bunch, have something insightful to say, like write it all up, and then there really wasn't like a good way to, at least at the time, to like monetize my efforts. So not like there's so many outlets for you to get paid for your talent or your expertise or for your content, even if you're like giving a bunch of it away for free, than what existed like 5, 6, 7 years ago. So
Yeah.
So I just gave it up. So I'm out to brunch with her and I'm just like, like I can't be like a strategy card game or board game writer again. Like that was just too much work. I'm not really in that scene. I'm like, I love food. Like I've always cooked for myself. I used to work as like a short order cook in like a pizza shop for like 4 years. So I've always been really comfortable in the kitchen. Good Eats is like one of my favorite shows ever. So I'm just we're sitting there and we're eating and I'm like, man, food writers, they have it so fucking easy. All they do is write about the food they eat and they get to eat for free. Why am I not doing that? It's so like literally spot on what it's like to be a food writer. It's so easy. Obviously, that's exactly what it's like for everyone involved with food content.
I think you're onto something.
Yeah.
Prepare for a reboot of this show.
Yeah, I mean, that idea has like some truth, but the naivety of it is like could fill the Grand fucking Canyon. But that was the motivation. So I was just like, but I also was wise enough with my own skill set and my own personality being like, well, I'm not gonna be like the next Craig LeBon or some serious food writer. Like, who the fuck am I? Like, why would they listen to my opinion and be that like a serious opinion about food? And I've always loved comedy. I've always been like kind of like a funny, silly person. So I'm like, well, why don't I make like the anti food vlog? Like, why don't I make like, instead of like getting into like how well this was prepared, like my review is like, yo, those nachos were dope. Like 4 out of 5 sombreros, just like be totally ridiculous about it. And then, that was like the initial idea. There's only like a handful of articles on the website. The written content I haven't really stayed on top of just because the podcast takes all my time besides like social media engagement. So that's been the idea is like evolved from there. But that's where it came from. That's the origin story of Full Belly Laughs.
And so for not only me, but for people that are, my listeners that may be new to your show, give a breakdown of the podcast.
Sure. Yeah. So the podcast is called Full Belly Laughs. Anything Full Belly Laughs is me in the show. So fullbellylaughs.com, Full Belly Laughs on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, iTunes, you name it. I think except for Tumblr, some Jagoff snagged the name before I could. But it's that's the banner and that's the name. Basically the concept of the show is it's like if Quizzo could crash a dinner party full of comedians. So,
okay.
Like our tagline is when food meets funny. So basically there's a few iterations of the show because it's still like kind of evolving its identity, but it also just does different things. So basically when you tune in, there's 3.5 versions. So one is we perform the show live on stage sometimes, like so far at Philly Improv Theater. So like obviously that's going to sound and flow differently than when we record on location at a restaurant. So it's like the live stage production is like a little bit more segmented. There's obviously a live audience track. We're really only eating snacks versus like we're in a restaurant and there's like a chef that's like, talking on tape and preparing us like real food and stuff. So, and then like the main version of the show that you usually would hear, because they're like special engagements. This is recorded in Brian Durkin's apartment studios, like any professional podcast, which is so true.
Isn't it neat what podcasters do? Like
Mhm.
how they like we name our studios.
Yeah.
Like literally every place I've ever been has usually been a living room or kitchen,
Yeah.
and it's always had a fancy studio name.
Oh yeah. Well, that's one of the things I love about Allison Rosen on her show. She just always calls her studio dining room studios. Because that's literally where she records. It's awesome.
Funny.
It's a great name. I wish I could have used it. But yeah. So like 90% of the time or 80% of the time when you would listen to the show, it's going to be recorded in my place, and the round table is going to be either 3 comedians or 2 comedians and then some kind of food professional that's like brought a recipe for me to make or brought food for us to taste, and we kind of interview that person. So that's like the first half of the show is we're always eating something, commenting about it a little bit, and then just like letting the conversation grow organically like you would at any dinner table. So very similar to our conversation here. Like I was
So far I'm signing up.
Yeah. I was introduced as a person that podcast, and then we started talking about Kevin Smith and magic and, yada, yada, yada. So that's exactly how like my show flows. It's just, a round table of 4 people. And then the second like half-ish, like the other big segment of the show is we like wrap up the show playing trivia games. So some of the games are like a total gag. Others are like serious trivia. Our 2 big like serious trivia games is we do this music game called like Initial Listen, where the answers are always Billboard Top 100 songs from a certain year, and then the clues are like an acronym of the song and artist, and you try to guess what it is. So if the answer was like Taylor Swift, "Shake It Off" by Taylor Swift, like I would say "SIO" by TS. And then, of course, if the comedian doesn't know what it is, they'll fill in the blanks with something funny. It'll be like, I can't think of anything funny.
It's too late for that. It's too late to be funny.
It's not, instead of "Shake It Off" by Taylor Swift, they might say like, "Suck It Out" by, Tom Sawyer or something. You know what I mean? Like, let's say something silly, because they're funnier in the moment than I can be, at least at this hour. But yeah, so that's like another one game that we play, and then the other big game that we always close the show with is a game that I call Continue Shopping, and that's like our movie game. So we always close the show with like movie trivia, and basically how it works is I pick like a DVD that you can find on Amazon, and then people try to like guess DVDs that were like purchased with that DVD.
Oh, that's neat.
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
Neat.
So yeah, I'm as I've explained, I'm a big gamer. So the show is very much like my personality. Like I love hanging out with friends and joking around and having a good time. I love eating great food, and I love trivia and movies and stuff. So the show is a combination of all those things. So you can play along at home while having a laugh listening to it, and then after the show's over, you can go on the website and make the recipes that I make on the show, and they're all legit. They're either in my normal rotation that I eat off air, or developed specifically for the show and test them out to make sure that they're not total shit.
That's a very cool concept of the show. Like I would never think to like I love food, but I don't really like the only time I ever like get caught up in like food shows is if it happens to be on like someone else was watching it.
Yeah, that happens.
The biggest example would be that show with Adam something and other, where he went around doing all the challenges. Man versus Food. That's what it is.
Yeah.
That was that's been the only food show that I've ever been hooked on. But I like the hook, and like so for me, podcasting, like I don't listen to music like at all. For the last 10 years, I've probably listened pretty exclusively to podcasts. Every now and then I'll pop a song on
Sure.
from the late 80s, early 90s, if I'm feeling nostalgic. But for the most part, like my car ride is full of podcasts that I listen to,
Yeah.
or I'm editing podcasts all the time, or whatever it is. And like it's this so kind of going back to like our original introduction of the show and how you and I met through the Philadelphia Podcasting Society.
Yeah.
I used to be like a huge, like I listened to every Kevin Smith podcast
Okay.
or like big name podcasts. But now, honestly, like I've had to decide, like, okay, you know what? This like I used to listen to what's one of Kevin Smith's podcasts on a regular basis. And I just said, you know what? I'm listening to I listened to the two big local ones that I've picked up over the last like 6 months is Party of One podcast and oh god, he's gonna kill me for forgetting 25 o'clock.
Okay.
From Danny Drago. And they are like, so those two plus any other, like, I guess they're not local, obviously. I guess indie, we'll go with that word. Indie
Sure.
podcasts. Like, I've picked up a bunch of those just from listening to other podcasts.
Yeah.
So, like, I'm now less of a mainstream podcast listener and more of like a, your show I can guarantee will become part of my rotation because it hits everything that just sounds great to me.
Oh, awesome.
And I
Glad.
I don't listen to, I would actually venture to say I don't listen to specifically any comedy podcasts. Like what's the big one? Comedy Bang Bang is like a huge one.
Yeah,
Like,
I mean, there's a few. So it's funny that you mentioned that because it's like obviously my like all the creative projects I'm doing are like comedy focused. So especially like Full Belly Laughs, there's laughs in the title. So
yes.
yeah, I tend to gravitate towards podcasts that before like a year or so ago when I was first listening to podcasts, I'd listen to like This American Life all the time or like other ones that were more story based or reporting or more serious. But now I'm pretty much like always watching something that's like at least got some kind of comedic flair. And simply in the same nature that I feel like that you may have gravitated towards independent shows is, I like listening to stuff that I find on the Philly Podcast Network just because it's like how when I was studying screenwriting that I just started watching movies in a different way. Like I'm listening to podcasts as I enjoy them, but I'm also a creator and a producer, and a host. So it's just I'm listening to them being like, oh, that was a great idea. Like I should try a version of that. So
yeah, no, it's like I said, I mean, 10 years ago, and I'm sure the community was just as strong as it was 10 years ago. But I think it was all too new to really know that. And I never truly have been like a podcaster, honestly. Like I've always considered myself a broadcaster up until doing the show, because everything I was doing was typically for a live audience. So like the podcast audience kind of got the shitty end of the stick, because like you kind of have to be there in the moment to appreciate a live broadcast a lot of times. Which is, there's like, I listen to a lot of podcasts that do live shows, and I truly appreciate those live shows, even listening in podcast form. So that's not always the case, but like when you do it week to week as a live broadcast, that's kind of what you're just gearing the show towards. So like even though I've been in it for 10 years, I'm still kind of new to it, to straight up podcasting.
Sure.
And that's like the thing that I love is just the community. Now, I've joined other podcast groups that are a little bit more broader range than like a local thing, that they're not unfriendly, but they're definitely not as engaging as the Philadelphia Podcast Society is.
Yeah, and I think that's true for like anything Philly related, because I've been, as I've talked about like a brief history of my hobbies and stuff on here, I've been in a lot of different communities, and anything that's related to Philly, and I guess I have to make a disclaimer for my ignorance, like kind of living in this general area like all my life. But something about the Philly area, just like the Philly attitude, and then just like always kind of being in the shadow of New York and stuff, I just feel like anyone that's in any community, especially if it's creative in any capacity, because even card games, there's a creative element there. You have to design your deck and stuff. There's this. Yeah, there is this like big sense of pride of like where you're from and like banding together and like trying to get the tide to like rise up to like put the city on the map. Yeah, it's definitely something I've like going to like the Podcast Society meetup and
So you ended up going to that?
yeah, I am now a card carrying member.
That's awesome. Yeah, I was that it's tough to do those weekend things for me because that's like when I see the kids all day.
Yeah.
So and they're still young enough where I don't mind seeing them all day. So I was going to go. I missed out. What I'm waiting for, what I'm definitely going to partake in, is I think this will be the fourth, maybe fifth annual Podcast Fest.
Cool. Good.
That I'm praying to God that I can book something. I have ideas for this show that I want to, I want to book a little bit more of, nothing against you and previous guests, but like more of a high profile guy. But like he's a Philadelphia, he's a Philadelphia guy. Like he's born in, I shouldn't say born and raised. I'm almost positive born and raised Philadelphia, but he lives in Philadelphia now. I'll tell you off air. So and I'm hoping to do that. I also want to do our D&D podcast. I would love to do live at one of the Podcast Fest dates. But yeah, like I'm like this is for me. Like I think I finally have found my place in podcasting. Like it's taking a long time and a lot of trial and error. And I this format I think really works for me. And like now that I'm doing it so often, I'm like, all right, now I want to like get so involved, like whether it be just the original concept for this show was like have podcasters on and let's just sit around and talk about podcasting.
Mm-hmm.
And then I realized like I literally have a very limited pool to pull from.
Sure.
And now that I'm more in that world of Philadelphia Podcasting Society and stuff, I don't think that's the case. I think I do have a bigger pool than I originally thought. But I do like talking to, like, I wouldn't have the love for tabletop if I was restricted to podcasters on this show.
Yeah.
So so like just and like the being a guest on Party One podcast, that was the first time I was a guest on someone's podcast in years, and it was just cool to like, as you know, you're experiencing now, like it's totally liberating. I think being a guest because like. You come in here, you're sitting here talking for a little over 2 hours now, and then you're done. You're done with it. Like you don't have to edit it or anything.
Yeah, it's super easy to be a guest.
Yeah. So like that's like kind of like my next phase as I go through. Now that I think I don't want to say perfected, as episode 10 disproved, but as I'm more comfortable being a podcaster now, it's like, all right, I want to go and promote this podcast and I want to go and be a guest. I don't know. It's just the Philadelphia Podcasting Society is a very cool thing to do that in
Sure,
whether
yeah.
it's just social media or even like it has opened up opportunities to be a guest on other shows.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I've been, that's how this came about. I've been a guest on like another local podcast. I've had podcasters on my show, so yeah, it's been great. It's been good to connect us all for sure.
That being said, I can hear in both our voices that it's got to be midnight for those listening. It's like 12:30.
Yeah.
In late May, so I think just so this is where I'll let you plug whatever you need to plug. If you have anything that's associated with a date, I'd say keep it to like mid to late June.
Okay.
So go plug.
Yeah. So. Just to hammer it home, my podcast, Full Belly Laughs, it's when food meets funny. It's a it's a comedy show that's food centric. So I take comedians out to eat or I invite them over for a meal. We chat about the food. You get the recipe. We play trivia games to wrap up the show. It's like Quizzo Crash the Dinner Party with funny people. So you can get that on anywhere that you could find podcasts, iTunes, Stitcher, the whole shebang. You can go to the website fullbellylaughs.com. That's fullbellylaughs.com. We're on.
I love it.
We're on social media big time. Twitter, we have a huge presence. So like we tweet like approximately every 2 hours a day. So, yeah, if you like simple, fun jokes and commentary on trending topics, definitely check us out there. Facebook will be very ramped up by the time you hear this, so there'll be like memes and beams and good shared content on there for sure. So if you like, if you've ever stumbled upon a BuzzFeed food video or a tasty food video on your feed, there'll be stuff like our Facebook page will either be sharing that or making fun of that.
I love it.
Yeah, there'll be similar content to that. And then if you like food porn and really dumb food related memes, definitely follow us on Instagram. We have like a few tropes that we're playing with. Like it'll be a picture of food and it'll say, you won't believe what happened next. So it's like just silly, like meta commentary on memes in general. So yeah,
you definitely play the social media game, right? Where you use each one differently, so everyone has to follow you on everything.
Well, no, that's like social media 101. You don't want to double post because it's like there's comedians that I'm Facebook friends with that I don't follow on Twitter because I see on Facebook their updates are being posted from Twitter. So it's like, not that I don't think they're funny, but if I subscribe to you on Twitter, I'm getting the same shit I already saw that I already liked, So yeah, anyone else out there that's got their own business or project or podcast or whatever, you absolutely have to be doing like different content for each platform. And
I mean that's what we do 100%. It's never the same.
Yeah, you have to break it up. So
it's so my and just before we end the show, like I think it's because I'm not I guess I don't want to say it's my age, but I'll say it's my age, even though I'm only like a year and a half, 2 years older than you.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't. Maybe it's I don't have the time. What I've done recently is like so. A lot of my show Twitters and whatnot, like they all post the whatever WordPress posts out there.
Yeah.
And then like I'll go and I use my personal Twitter as like the more personable Twitter, and that's like honestly. Again, being the less famous, thinner Kevin Smith, that's kind of what he does. Like he has a Smodcast Twitter. He does most of the promoting is done on at that Kevin Smith. And that's kind of not that that's the right way to do it. It's just the way I do it.
Yeah. I don't agree. I agree with that method, but I understand why people do that. I mean, like why he's doing that is like the brand Kevin Smith is more famous podcast.
Yeah. Yes.
So yeah, it all depends on what you're trying to build. Like I'm trying to my like 10-year plan with Will They Last is to be like the next Nerdist. So like I wanted to like have an identity that's obviously like on brand with my style because it's it is me, but at some point like I'm gonna have I'm not going to be in the day-to-day situation with it. Like, just like Chris Hardwick is not in the day-to-day. Yeah, everything that happens with Nerdist. So,
I think my issue with social media is that it is, and this is where we said earlier, podcasting's easy. This is where it's not. It's the social media aspect of it, and it's anything that after you stop recording, everything after that is not necessarily easy if you are trying to do something more than just sit around and talk.
Yeah.
So, and that's, I fully adhere to I'm bad at social media and I try to do better, and I'm definitely doing better on my personal social media, my personal Twitter.
Yeah. Just so like social media management is like something that I have like a lot of experience in. And, basically the advice that I could give to the listeners is, one, as we talked about before, have different content for each platform. 2, you can't ignore it. It is super important. That's how you're going to get fans. Identify your fans. Build relationships with your Maverns, like to borrow a term from Gladwell's Tipping Point. But most importantly, like you really can't do anything wrong on social media. And what I mean when I say that is I know so many comedians that won't tweet or don't tweet as often as they ought to because they're afraid to like make a bad joke. And
Mhm.
yes, you could make a Facebook update. You could post an Instagram picture. You could make a terrible Twitter joke. You could lose followers, because they see you on their feed and they're like, oh, this is stupid. Why am I following Full Belly Laughs? Like, unlike, right? But, I mean, the odds of that happening are not, over 50%, like they're low. And
Yeah.
And if they're happening, you're not really going to know it. Like, you're not going to unless you're going to be on the cover, unless your tweet is so colossally bad that you would end up on the cover of like Huffington Post tomorrow. If you have 1,000 followers, you lose 10, like, okay, like whatever. That's 1%,
Yeah.
but every tweet that you write, you're just going to get better at tweeting. So just fucking make shit, and you will figure out what works and like what doesn't work, and figure out your voice. And like, you can't get any better at that unless you just do it. So that's
I can speak from experience that on my Twitter at HHWST, I literally post nothing funny. I try to post something funny, but there's been nothing funny posted to that Twitter in the last, we'll say since I started this posting the show online. So since March, I've been heavily more tweeting and stuff. And I've done nothing but gain followers. So you don't even have to be funny.
No, you don't. And I mean, for what I'm doing, obviously, like, that's the goal and that's the brand. That's why I would want people to follow me. But yeah, like, if your content has to make sense for like whatever the kind of audiences that you're trying to build, like, and that's what's been difficult to navigate with most. It's it's a comedy show, but it's about food, so there are two things that people can relate to and do together all the time. Everyone has gone out to the bar to dinner or had a board game night at their place and had a bunch of laughs, while eating and or like drinking. But, as a food brand, like 90, like 90, like just argumentatively, like 99% of food content out there is very stuffy, So it's like the kind of person that listens to like Martha Stewart's podcast is not gonna like Full Belly Laughs, So yeah,
I didn't even know she had one, to be honest.
I believe that she now has one because podcasts are like a thing now. But yeah, it's so that's been like the kind of uphill battle for Full Belly Laughs, is just like identifying those niche people. So yeah, but it's just it is what it is, and hopefully someday it'll be what I expect it to be. But yeah,
I think that's what we're all reaching for. It's funny. It's because I used to be a numbers guy. I used to be a big numbers guy, and now not so much. Now it's what I chase after, and it's just replacing numbers. It's one stress for another. Is like the iTunes review. Like that's what gets me going. If someone says, "Oh, I want to leave you a good review," or I am going to listen to you, and because I sneak that into the podcast now, or at least usually in like so like this episode is going to be cut into 2 episodes. As my audience knows, at some point I'm going to cut this show, and you're going to hear me talk about iTunes. And there's this other podcast that I produce that sometimes, as the producer, I do a pre-intro, and I always sneak in something about not only their podcast but my podcast to go listen and rate and review. So you sneak it in when you can. And that's my new stress, is iTunes reviews.
Yeah, and I mean, you can't help it. Like that's the toughest part, honestly, about being a creative in 2016, even if you're not a podcaster, because all the lines are blurred and all the hats are blurred. Like I could talk another like hour or two about this, but like the short of it is, it's like anyone that is a creative is also an executive, because they're all like one person. They're all like kind of freelancing. So it is tough to like at times to turn off the manager side and be like, ooh, I only have this many downloads, or like, why did I only get this many likes, or why did I only get this many retweets, or whatever. It's just like, I think that's something that every person that's a creative battles with whatever, they could be graphic designer, writer, comedian, podcaster, doesn't matter. There's going to be that version of that for them.
Yeah. Yeah, I've tried to turn it off as much as possible, but like you said, it's hard. It's hard, if not impossible, to do for creatives, as you said. All right, Brian, thank you for being on the
Yeah,
show.
thank you for having me. Oh, I do want to plug one last thing.
Go for it.
So yeah, full body last, blah blah blah. You heard enough. But I will be performing at Helium on Wednesday, June 29th. Whatever the last Wednesday of June is, I believe is the 29th. It's a 10 o'clock show. It's I believe only $10, but if you like Full Belly Laughs on Facebook or drop us a line, I can get you a discounted ticket if you really want to see me perform stand up. But yeah, Wednesday night, 10 o'clock, Helium in Philadelphia, June 29th, stand up.
Yes, and that is, you have at least, well, from what, if you're hearing that plug right now, and I'll make sure to plug it in part one as well. But if you're hearing it now, that's a week away, because I believe this second part of the episode is June 22nd.
Oh, cool.
So just in time, you guys have time to hit it up and whatnot. Make sure you check out Full Belly Laughs on wherever podcasts are available, whatever you choose. If it's iTunes, subscribe and leave some pleasant reviews. While you're there, you should probably also follow this podcast, Everything is Awesome, and leave a 5-star review. I don't even bury the lead. I don't even just say leave an honest review. Just a 5-star. You could say it's a piece of shit. Just leave a 5-star review. Just make it 5 stars.
Whatever you want. If you give us that 5 stars, it's good.
Yeah, that's all I care about. You can follow me on Twitter at HHWST. You can follow the show on Twitter. It's a new Twitter at Real Awesome Pod, and a brand new website at awesomepodcast.com. Yet again, Brian, thank you for being on the show. It was a blast. I hope you are willing to do it again in the future. Because it was a lot of fun. This is, and I say this every time, but this is definitely one of my favorite conversations. And this I don't say every time. It is definitely one of the most enlightening conversations I had, especially about card games and stuff. So it was, and social media. Yeah. So it was a lot of fun. It was a blast. For Everything is Awesome, I'm Kev, he's Brian, and we'll see you next time right here, only on awesomepodcast.com.
Everything is Awesome is produced by Crude Humor Studios. For more information about the podcast, please visit us online at awesomepodcast.com. Or if you're interested in advertising on the show, please email us at advertising@crudehumorstudios.com. Stream and download all episodes on iTunes. While you're there, please consider leaving a 5-star review. If you're a fan of the show, please let us know by following us on Twitter and Instagram at ThatEntertains.